zahraniční účastníky. Nám v České je to jasné, že v české politice již mnoho let, nebo minimálně od začátku tohoto desetiletí, fenomén Číny a Ruské federace hraje roli ještě jinou než jen jako otázky globální. Stává se kartou ve vnitropolitickém boji a mnoho politiků se vymezuje vůči prezidentovi buď pozitivně nebo negativně z hlediska vztahu k Číně, k Rusku, k Ruské federaci. A proto možná pro někoho trošičku nelogicky, ale já si myslím, že naši čínští přátelé tu naši situaci tady znají velice dobře, nelogicky, když hovoříme o Číně, tak je tady potřeba to brát v těch širších souvislostech i ve vztahu k Rusku, k Ruské federaci, protože ty karty potom v tom ryze vnitropolitickém, velice brutálním boji jsou právě tyto otázky a těmi na sebe ty jednotliví protivníci útočí. Proto pro vysvětlení, já jsem si uvědomil, že pro někoho, kdo je neznalý vnitřních českých poměrů, takže to může být trošičku překvapující a závadějící, takže teď snad jsem to doplnil o tu dimenzi, tu naši typickou vnitropolitickou a českou. A nyní bych chtěl požádat našeho přítele ze střední Evropy, tady si dovolím jednu poznámku. Někteří, jaksi opět, přátelé z té západní Evropy chápou střední Evropu, Česko, Polsko, Maďarsko, Slovensko a tak dále. A na můj argument, že ta Vídeň je na východ od Prahy, jsou velice překvapeni, protože jaksi jim to nedochází, ale protože my Češi víme, že máme mnoho společného s našimi rakouskými přáteli, že jsme spolu měli 300 let společnou monarchii, společného císaře, tak si myslím, že je potřeba do těchto středoevropských diskuzí zapojovat i naše partnery v Rakousku a ve Vídni. A prosím tedy Josefa, aby se ujal slova.
Dobrý den, Tom Gemenau from my Chinese comrade. I'm very glad to be invited to this conference because I realized that in my life I was much more often in Beijing than in Prague. I think this is not a good relation for our neighbors with which we are very similar. This is the first time for me also to be in a multinational conference on this about left in China. So for me personally, I started to learn Chinese, to study sinology in the 70s, but I couldn't finish this study because at this time I had some anti-communist professor, and so it was not possible. So I changed to economy and to geography, and in the last 10 years I'm based at the University of Vienna at the East Asian Study Institute and do some research on industry and environment in China. Only 3 days ago we had a meeting with a report, for example, on the relations of the so-called reformers in the East Asian, from the East European countries in the 70s and 80s with the Chinese. What were the relations, for example, between Otashik and Kornai and all these guys? It was very interesting, and the Chinese stressed the relations to Hungary and Yugoslavia, but I don't want to speak about this, but so very interesting topics on our institute. So I would have a PPT presentation, but I have some paper here you can fill in if you want. If you are interested in my presentation, I can send you my presentation. And I also want to say to you that I organized the so-called China Study Group Europe, who is based on some 100 people all over Europe, from the left, which are tackling Chinese problems from the left point, so of different fractions, so to say. And if you are interested in this mailing list of this group, you can also put in your email and you will get some information on our activities. For example, 1 year ago we had a lecture with Samir Amin on China. You know, he was maybe one of the most important left intellectuals in the world. He passed away, unfortunately, the last month. And in Vienna he said about the future of socialism, he said, there will be many uprisings in the 21st century, but there are 3 territories where there is the most probability to have a transformation to real socialism. And this is, he said, so Europe, Russia and China, because there the legacy of left activities is strong, and so there the probability for a transformation is more. So, but this was his opinion, and he did many works on China. I think we have also good contacts with an old sinologist from the former German Democratic Republic. His name is Peters. He is almost 90 years, and he's the one, almost the only one left sinologist which is left from the big potentials of sinology departments all over Europe, also in the Eastern European countries and Soviet Union, but because they also changed their color to more neoliberal or liberal. So he wrote many books on China which are very interesting. But now, yeah, for example, this year we had a journey of 50 Chinese professors of Marxism. We had a good discussion about the future of socialism in China, and at this time I noticed that the translation in the discussion with our Chinese friends is really very important. So when we had a good translation between German and Chinese, and then we realized that they had different views on the possibility of socialism in China and so on. And so, but I only want to say they have a very long perspective. So 100 years, 200 years. So socialism maybe will begin 2050 and so on. But okay, this would be an own presentation. So I have only some opinions to some specific points now in short, and I have a long presentation on this. So my topic would be, what about the dragon in the room of the leftists in Europe? So the dragon is no negative symbol, you know. So and the main question, and I want to answer this question now and not at the end, the main question for me, you know, the notion of socialism with Chinese characteristics, you know, and there are very different interpretations of this notion, and we could have some discussion about this, but the main thing for me as a European left is, and the consequence of this notion, socialism with Chinese characteristics, is the question, what is socialism with European characteristics? What is the difference? Is there some difference? I think there is some difference altogether. And I would mention 5 points. The first is, but this is no different, maybe transition is a very long period, and so all the work of Gramsci, for example, is specific for Europe. So hegemony, civil society, The next point is rule of law, democratic standards between the left along Rosa Luxemburg. And also one point is the defending of the welfare state. I think we are not aware maybe too much about the results and achievements of the European welfare state, which is still existing, which was diminished but is still existing. And the right and the neoliberals say, for example, that Europe has 7% of the population, but 50% of the social benefits all over the world, and this is right. And so we can be proud on these achievements of the European welfare states still existing. And I think they are discussing about this also in China. So now only for some points now my opinion. So next point is Belt and Road Initiative. I think this is one of the biggest achievements of Chinese policy and of world policy ever. So this is the biggest investment platform in history with effects on peace and development. This is the main point, I think. I do not have many criticism on this. I think it's really impressive, and I think the Europeans should participate. Yeah, there will be problems in tackling all these different views, but I think it's necessary to participate. And it's not a belt, and it's not a road, and it's not only traffic. It's not the Silk Road. This is only a beautiful notion. It's the complete development of the Asian, European, and parts of the African continent. Some also say South America is also New Silk Road, but then all the world is the New Silk Road. Yeah. Next thing, so I personally support the Chinese foreign policy as a peaceful policy, almost in all points, but in one point I am not sure if it is okay, and this is the South China Sea, and about the form of the policy there. So, as you know, maybe this is not a new way of the People's Republic. This stand from China to the South China Sea was also before the People's Republic in this way, but they could not implement their opinion. And also other countries do make unilateral steps in this region, and especially the USA have a very a policy which aggravates all the problems, as you know. But I think the form, and please notice what I say, the form of the policy of China in this region I do not support. And I think it's so important because, you know, the Steve Bannon, the former advisor of Trump, said, we will go to war with China within 10 years. This he said 2 years before, I think, so in 8 years, I don't know. But anyway, if this will be true, and there is some probability, then maybe this conflict and war will begin at the South China Sea. So therefore, I think, yeah, it's an important question. Yeah, the next thing is environment. This is a special thing of mine. And I think of all the problems, that China has many problems, as the Chinese know best. The most important problem is the environmental problem, because China is so dense and has developed so rapid form that the ecological problems are one dimension bigger than in Europe. But on the other hand, the Chinese developed the notion of ecological civilization, and I think this is a really very important perspective, and they have also introduced many steps in this way, but they are really in a desperate situation, not only from, also from climate change, and the harms of environment in China are really, really strong. The Chinese know this, and so they are really, they have to do something. This is an existential question for China. Yeah. Then the next thing is, yeah, we Europeans discovered the Chinese in Africa and say, oh, the Chinese are here in Africa, what? How? And so, but you know, the history of Europe in Africa. But now it's on the Balkans with the Chinese, and I think, as was said already today, yeah, the European Union did not a good policy on the Balkans, and so I think it's okay when the Chinese come and make projects on the Balkans. Yeah, next thing. It's related to the South China Sea. So I would not say that in China there is a nationalist tendency in the level of government, but there are nationalist tendencies. There are books on this, and there is the paper Global Times, which is said to be on this tendency too. So this is a possibility that in a crisis the policy could change to this nationalist tendency, but I do not believe it. But it's the possibility. But effectively they do not support, in difference to the Russians, for example, the right-wing and nationalist forces in Western Europe. So they do not, for example. But, you know, in China's history, for example, with India and Vietnam, there were times when these nationalist tendencies come on the topic. So, yeah, we should see, not only in Europe, but also in other countries like China, these nationalist forces exist. Okay, the most important thing for me as a leftist is that China contributes to the yes, to the climate change issue anyway, and also to the decreasing of global inequality. So this is not socialism, but it's very important. So from these two criteria, I have a very positive evaluation of the Chinese policy all over. And at the end, I want to say, yeah, to understand China, as I always say, to understand China, you have to look at history. If you don't look at history, you cannot understand China. And you know that there is no new rising of China, but there is a re-rising of China back to their status of 200 years before. And I think there is a theory most adequate to understand this process. This is the theory of the development state, where a state proposes industrializations, interventions in the economy, and promoting specific sectors, and have a good governance of public enterprises. And I think from this we can learn also in Europe for economic policy. But anyway, I want to underline my first remarks on what is important, and for me is important that we should be proud and we should develop our European characteristics of socialism. I think this is also in the sense of the Chinese, that we have together this global socialist perspective. So thank you very much.